There's also the development of secondary or self-conscious emotions. And this occurs, of course, after our development of our basic emotions. Now, what exactly are these secondary emotions? Well, these are basically emotions that involve enhancement or damage to the sense of self. Things such as embarrassment, pride, shame, and guilt. These tend to emerge in the second and also the third year of life. So for children, it is really critical that they have two components before these emotions, these secondary emotions, develop. One is they have to have achieved self-recognition. We are going to be talking about the Rouge test later on, and this is basically what we're talking about, where they actually recognize images of themselves. But that is not enough. They also must have standards for being able to evaluate their own conduct. They need to be able to evaluate their own behavior. And think about it. If we're talking about things such as pride, you really can't be proud of yourself unless you are able to evaluate your own self-conduct. Now, with these secondary emotions, one of the things that's really, really critical is to understand how strong parents can have an influence on these self-conscious emotions. Because when we look at how parents respond to these different emotions, that is essentially how children ultimately will respond to these different emotions. So, it really determines whether a child focuses on being proud of their successes or ashamed of their failures. So if you have a parent who, when their child is able to achieve something, they are very enthusiastic, they also exhibit a lot of pride, that is what the child is going to focus on. As opposed to parents who may react neutrally to success, or in some cases even discount the successes, particularly when we're talking about something that we as adults find simple, such as, I don't know, jumping on one foot or even using the potty. And instead what they do is they focus on when there is a failure, and when children are, particularly these toddlers, ashamed of their failure. A lot of times when we see parents who behave in this manner, from the outset we say, well, they must be horrible parents. A lot of times these parents don't even realize that they're doing this. They really don't realize that they are ignoring or even discounting these accomplishments that are very difficult for children, and they're really focusing on these failures. Then what happens? You find that in those cases, you have children who, instead of focusing on their successes, they simply focus on their failures. And when that happens, you tend to have much more negative long-term as well as short-term outcomes. So it really is better to focus on those successes and being proud of those successes, and being very neutral to the failure, so that what you're doing is you are encouraging those successes.